Okay. So one of the last question was this one here that's on, well, let me share my screen. That would help. So the last question was this one that's on the screen here. You know, if you had some guidelines, or do you have some guidelines, or you could write them, what would they be to keep your colleagues out of trouble? What would you suggest? And I'm always interested because rules are useful, but if you don't understand the why, then you'd be tempted to go, well, why not? You know, think of other ways around it. So, I mean, I'm not expecting a dissertation on the technical aspects, but I just like to hear a little bit of why you think this rule might be important. Did anybody's group come up with anything in particular that you want to talk about?
We said that it would be important to have some kind of like documentation or shared like even like a shared wiki or something with your group that has step-by-step process of what you do for your image processing, and then maybe even in that you can include like references um, or like articles about like how it works or why you're doing it, and then links to the software. Um, and then I also said, because I do a lot of coding, I said like commenting your code can be really important to show your process, because if you're sharing between lab mates or something, the code can get messy, and if you have no idea what someone did. So that would be, I guess, another guideline to help through image processing. Yeah, we didn't have a whole lot of time to kind of go through everyone's ideas in my group, so that's kind of my ideas.
Yeah, but we also said, I mean, same group as Lauren, we also said it's important to provide the original unprocessed image as well, so that you can follow these guidelines or this step or protocol we said, and comments so you can acquire or reproduce the same image that your colleague might have
One
done.
of the things to consider is just maybe taking a pause right before you publish and call the figure up and call the original data up and look at them and go, does this processed image accurately represent what we started with? And can I defend any differences? That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And sometimes this is not an easy process, because sometimes you need to have lots and lots of images to actually get statistical differences between them. If you're looking for small differences, then you can compensate by having tons of images and doing statistics. And there, maybe each image will not represent. I mean, we are dealing with images which very often now the complexity of it, and especially with AI coming in to the picture, the complexity in such that our brains cannot grasp. So that is one added difficulty. But I think throughout the discussions, it's been very clear that documentation is key, and also access to the original data. And this is something that is really growing in the community field and amongst the people who give money. Is that the access to the original data freely and not just on demand is really growing. So please think about it when you publish something. You should put your images in a repository. So there are many repositories out there, and you should put them up there so that anybody who's interested in looking at the original data should be able to download it and access it and inspect.
A colleague here at the University of Arizona would often tell me that when he was reviewing papers and had some questions and asked for the original data, if the person that wrote the, or persons that wrote the paper could not produce the original data, he would tell the editor, don't accept this paper. It's one of your best protections against an accusation of fraud is to be able, or misconduct or cheating, however you want to call it, is to be able to produce that original data. So that's gold. You really want to make sure that that's protected and safe in a way that, and you know, you can make mistakes. That's why you work on a copy. Always on a copy.
And then you need to be able to find the data, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why you have file tools like Omero, which it makes it a little easier. One of the things that I often find is in the United States, when we date a file, we tend to do month, day, year, and in Europe, it's typical to do day, month, year. Why not use the ISO standard and you do go from largest unit to and move slowly to smaller? So you go year, month, day. And if you've ever tried to sort that on a computer, it works so much better.
So we're lucky in Sweden because this is the way we actually
Good.
present. So the dates are always starting with the year, month, and day.
Yeah, good,
This is the
good.
standard way.
Yeah, and all the days and the months need to have a leading zero so that that works better.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, other things that I know we're running out of time. I wrote some guidelines and things like simple adjustments are usually okay. Histogram stretches. But when you start to get into things that are a little bit more elaborate, filtering, post-processing, there's nothing wrong with them, but they definitely need to be declared. And just watch when you downsize images to make them fit on a page, or perhaps decide that you want to blow something up. You'll find you don't add any more resolvable data by making an image larger. You want to aim for, I don't know what the standard is in metric. In the US, it would be 300 dots per inch for a publication. You can get away with a little bit less than that for a poster because people are standing further back. But if you're putting it in a publication, you don't want to have less than 300 dots per inch. How about some obvious, what are some obvious things that if you knew happened to an image that you saw in a publication, you would go, oh, that's wrong? Because you know that somebody in your lab might not know that.
So the obvious one, you mean the things that are visible in an image?
Yeah, I mean, there's some subtle things that you need to be careful of. I've already alluded to some of them, but what are some things that if you knew that it was in a publication image, you would go, oh, that's wrong. That's just not right that they did that.
Anyone?
So if you read Elizabeth Bick's articles, you can see some of the things that people do with like the gel images and to make their case falsely. But an example that I saw from the Journal of Cell Biology that they had someone actually submit was someone that made a composite image of confocal stuff just to make the cells look nicer. There were some empty spots, so they filled them in with other cells that they pasted out of something else. Might be appropriate for a textbook, you know, that you're using in a public school, but terrible for science because now that's a composite image. And really, I think that's one of the issues is composite images. If you're going to zoom in on a particular area, put a little box around it. If you're going to take two lanes of a gel and put them next to each other that were far apart, just put a little line, just so that it's clear that this is a composite in some form or fashion. Photoshop has that wonderful clone stamp tool. And actually, news photographers have gotten themselves in trouble because sometimes you can transfer data that you hadn't planned on transferring. There was an Associated Press photographer that ended up giving a welder and on a pipeline 3 hands because they thought they were fixing one thing and they brought the pixels that related to the hand to another part of the image. So there are a lot of things that are inappropriate for scientific images because we try to make them look nice, but that's when you treat it as a picture and not as data. Let me go to this final slide here. So the US space shuttle program is now retired, but there was an accident in the 1980s with the Space Shuttle Challenger. It went up and about 90 seconds after launch, unfortunately exploded like you can see in this image. And what had happened is they had solid rocket boosters on either side. And in any highly technical engineering situation like this, there are specifications. And the specifications were that the O-rings that fit between the segments were supposed to be treated in a certain way, and they weren't supposed to get below a certain temperature. And they pushed the limit a little bit, and the shuttle went off fine. And so they pushed it a little bit more. And over time, they realized, oh yeah, engineering specs are so rigid and it works when we do this. And then when they launched this particular shuttle, it was closer to freezing in Florida, of all places. And the temperature was cold enough and the solid rocket boosters had been used enough and people weren't as careful that they had deviated from the specifications enough that this happened. And they examined it, and that there had become a culture of people that had become insensitive to what was departing from normal and accepted standards, that they thought they could get away with it one more time. And if I can leave you with anything, is that you need to have some sort of internal standard that you decide, I'm not crossing this line. And look for that also in your lab. You can't guarantee that the person that sits down the bench from you has that same understanding. Communicate that with people. I have a few more slides after this on some issues that have come up and the publications that I've written. They are not the gold standard. They are important, but not the only ones. The work that Sylvie mentioned from Quarup Limi is fantastic. Probably all of us in the microscopy world should have done this a decade or two ago when we were first getting into digital images, but there was so much we needed to learn. And I'll leave you with this quote that a good reputation takes a lifetime to build, but it's only a moment to lose. This faculty member that I knew at the University of Arizona left our institution, went to another institution, was going to be the dean of a college, and then this stuff came to light, and he lost his dean's position and quite a bit of his reputation. So, Sylvie, did you have anything else that you'd like to
I
wrap
think
things
that
up with?
was an excellent conclusion to the day. So I think it's very important, very important topic, and I would say that most of the time people do not specifically want to cheat, but ignorance, and also, as Doug said, not having this internal standards. Stick to your standards and be critical. We have spoken about this. Be critical of the things that you inherit from your lab. It's not that people want to trick you or anything like this, but you inherit the history of the lab, and with the good and the bad. So be critical of what you're getting. So
don't let publication pressure or grant pressure cause you to cross that internal line.
Yes, or both pressure.
Yes.
So really, I want to thank you very much, Doug. That was very nice. So we're going to, I think we are already in the right place. So we're going to continue, and thanks a lot, and have a good day, because it's early in the morning for you.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.